In 1990, a man whose face the world had forgotten prepared to step into the sun. Millions watched, holding their breath for the moment a prisoner of 27 years would finally walk free. To understand the tension of that single day, we have to look at the society waiting for him outside the gates. South Africa was divided. The government built an entire legal structure, apartheid, to separate the population by race. This system dictated day-to-day life for millions of Black South Africans. It controlled where they could live, where they could work, and who they could vote for. By the time of his release, the country was fracturing under this pressure. Violence was escalating, and civil war felt like an immediate probability. The public and the government fully expected this man to walk out of his cell and call for revenge. The survival of the country rested on whether one deeply wronged individual would fuel the conflict or find a mechanism to dismantle the regime without mirroring its brutality. That man was Nelson Mandela. He started his career in a small village, eventually studying law to push back against the injustices he saw happening in his own community. He quickly realized that arguing in a rigged courtroom wouldn't fix the laws. He shifted his tactics, joining the African National Congress to organize direct resistance against the state. His speeches drew massive crowds and organized protests. The government panicked. They responded with force, implementing sweeping arrests and severe physical crackdowns on the resistance. Mandela was captured and put on trial for sabotage and conspiracy. Knowing the likely outcome, he stood in the courtroom and delivered a speech declaring he was prepared to die for the ideals of equality and freedom. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. The state's goal was specific: lock him away and remove his voice from the public conversation. The government calculated that physically removing their loudest critic would neutralize the resistance. They failed to realize that burying a leader often creates a martyr. Mandela was exiled to Robben Island. It was an isolation facility surrounded by freezing ocean currents, deliberately chosen by the state to make escape impossible. Inside, the environment was engineered to break a person down. The cells were tiny, the labor was exhausting, and the isolation was absolute. But the isolation had the opposite effect on Mandela. Instead of breaking his resolve, the daily grind of surviving those conditions focused his internal strength. The state strictly limited his letters and allowed almost no visitors. Yet those severe restrictions backfired. The few messages that did slip out carried weight, spreading far beyond the prison walls. Soon, his name became a rallying cry across the globe. Protests erupted in major cities. Musicians wrote anthems, and international leaders squeezed South Africa economically. After 27 years of censorship, the state's strategy backfired. His long absence had transformed him into an untouchable global symbol of resistance. In 1990, the moment the prison gates opened, Mandela held an explosive social power. The crowds were ready to follow whatever command he gave. While many anticipated armed conflict, he made an unexpected move. He publicly chose forgiveness over revenge. Mandela deployed forgiveness as a strategic political instrument. He aimed to absorb the rage of the resistance and convert it into a foundation for a unified government. By refusing to retaliate, he removed the government's primary justification for violence. This choice disarmed the hardliners and pulled South Africa back from the edge of immediate war. He realized that matching force with force would only leave the nation in ashes. Weaponizing peace was the only practical way to dismantle the oppressive regime while leaving a country intact to govern. 4 years later, the results of that strategy materialized. South Africa held its first fully democratic elections, and millions of citizens stood in the same long lines to cast their ballots. Nelson Mandela was sworn in as the country's first Black president. A man who was once hunted by the state now controlled its highest office. Yet his achievement transcended the election itself. It was the demonstration that human endurance and courage can outlast decades of systemic intimidation. He proved that answering hatred with hatred guarantees continued violence, while choosing to forgive opens up new possibilities. Mandela's 27-year ordeal remains a global proof that while freedom is won through struggle, lasting peace is a deliberate